So I've spent the last 10 years building a multi-million-dollar agency, which I guess sounds sexier than it is. It's a lot of work. I've learned a tremendous amount of lessons over the last 10 years and have thought a lot about if I were to start over, what would I do? I'll caveat this by saying I think a lot of the strategies that worked 8 to 10 years ago probably don't exactly work the same today. So what I want to do in this video is basically give you the rundown of what I did that worked and then basically explain how I would repackage that along with today's strategy to get back to this point if I was starting over. Hey guys, Ben here. Quick pause in the video to say if you like this content, please like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Back to the content. Bye. Okay, before we get into it, a quick rundown of my story and kind of timeline. So founded it back in 2018. Basically what I had come from was a startup that had been building software. Quality assurance, which is an aspect of doing software development, was something that we had really struggled with. I felt like there was a gap in the market because we struggled to hire people. I wasn't really happy with the agencies that I built, and then basically decided I'll start a quality assurance industry. A couple core tenets that I had going in. One is I really believed in recurring revenue, which I still really believe in. I think particularly if you don't have a brand, it takes almost the same amount of effort to sell something that's a recurring revenue as it does to sell a one-off thing. And so you're always better off creating a recurring revenue offer. And then was successful enough to get to around $1 million in recurring revenue within about 2.5 years. COVID hit right around that time. Spent a few years trying to survive and get through that. 2024-ish, started to find traction again, particularly alongside a lot of the rise in AI development. And then basically also just learning sales and marketing a lot more effectively. And then today we're doing around 3.5 million in revenue, have around 20 people. And yeah, so this is basically what I would do if I was going to start over. I do want to say that I think there's two phases to this. So if we just quickly grab an element, give me one second. Okay, so I do want to say up front that I think there's a really big difference between before you get to $1 million in revenue and after you get to $1 million in revenue and how you scale. Largely because I think that you can do a lot blunt force to get to $1 million in revenue and feel like I really understand that. Getting past $1 million in revenue is a lot more nuanced and involves, I think, a lot more pairing marketing with sales. And so we've had some success there, but we're still very much trying to figure this out. And I do address this. I think I want to say like all the way down here. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So we'll get there in a second. Yeah. 2 phases, 2 completely different games. Okay. So I guess I'll start here actually, because it's an interesting point. So what I believed going in was there are people who have this problem and I just have to find them. And I learned really quickly that the idea that you can just write the perfectly crafted email and have any kind of success, to me, is complete and utter bullshit. I came from the world of event ticketing. I knew how that industry worked, I would argue, then better than 99% of the people in this world. I knew how to test event ticketing platforms. I personally would believe that I could have done QA better than, I don't know, maybe this sounds arrogant, but a significant amount of the QA operations for event ticketing platforms. I pulled the top 200 or so event ticketing platforms. I found their CTOs. I wrote out a couple emails, explain where I think that likely event ticketing systems struggle, packages, a lot of the combinatorial things. A lot of theaters, for example, have a lot of rule systems that basically are in place and then need to break. And basically said to those CEOs, hey, let me do QA for you, right? And didn't get a single response. And I tried to customize it for the specific ticket system, the needs, etc. And that was a really interesting lesson very early on, because what it taught me, in my opinion, and people are going to say I'm wrong, I guess, or something like that, but is that to me, it wasn't about the perfect sales email. It was more about finding people who had the problem right now and basically selling to them. And so I pivoted. I basically said, okay, so that didn't work. What can I do? And instead what I did was I said, okay, if I need to find 5 customers that have this problem right now, what happens if I send 10,000 emails? And I think that there's a lot of people who are going to look at this and they're going to immediately accuse me of spamming the world. And I'm going to argue that when you are getting started as a company, not only will no one help you, but most people don't want you to succeed, and you just need to be bigger than you are and understand how to play the game. And I'm not saying that you should do this forever, but my personal opinion is that to get from 0 to 1 million when you have no revenue, stuff like that, it is perfectly reasonable to just basically say, how do I go bigger than anyone else? And I'll talk about this in a second, because this involves basically sales domains, automation, scraping, a whole variety of different things to actually be able to do it. But my personal opinion is how you get to 1 million in revenue is this. You find people whose houses are on fire. Well, let's try to find fire. Let's see what happens. You find people's houses are on fire and you sell them water. And what you're doing is you are creating your initial relationships, right? And if you are in an industry that exists, there are people whose houses are on fire, they are desperate, and you need to show up and sell them water in that moment, right? And that's what this is. That's what this entire strategy is, which is basically you are going for a massive volume play and you are trying to find people whose houses are on fire, right? In order to do it, you basically do, I can find the text, let me find another text box. You use sales domains, you scrape data, you find tools that are not going to cost you per sales domain. So there's a variety of tools that basically you can do this for, and they don't charge per sales domain, they just charge per seat and so forth, right? And so basically you can do that. And my general opinion is you can get to $1 million in recurring revenue by simply just finding people's houses are on fire and selling them water. Now you still have to be really good. Whatever your agency is, you still have to be remarkably good at what you're doing, but you just have to play the volume game, because and Hermosi says this a lot, which is you're not nearly as big as you think you are. Like, I have 16,000 followers on LinkedIn in the QA space, and that's like a drop in the bucket of the entire QA world. And so there's a vast majority of the QA world who has never heard of me. And so like you just have to be bigger than everyone else, right? And that was the strategy, right? And this goes to, and all kinds of people are going to tell me like gray areas, but like LinkedIn automation, cold email, etc. And then people are also going to tell me like, oh, this is the reason why you're the problem, whatever. And like my answer to that is, unless you already are starting a company with a lot of authority in the space, you build authority in the space by finding people's houses are on fire and selling them water. That's what you do. You don't build authority just by like big marquee customers don't just go, oh yeah, we'll work with you. So if I was starting over today, that's the root of it. Now, the benefit that I have is I have a lot more experience in the industry now and a lot more authority in the industry and a lot more skills than I frankly had 10 years ago. And so what I would do if I was starting over today is I would take this and I would pair it with some of the tactics that we're doing. And if I had a lot of success, we would post MRR or post 1 million. Why does that say that? We're going to fix that. Okay. So what does this mean? There's only so many people whose houses are on fire, right? And so what you need to do is you need to then, after you get to that, because you can't just basically spam people over and over again. So you basically build an agency based on this, and then you transition to the next phase. And the next phase is basically this. And this phase has completely changed with AI. And there's a couple things to recognize in this, which is personalization via relevancy, value, upfront, and relationships. Okay. And this is probably out of order, but basically this phase is all about relationships, because if you build the agency to get to 1 million based on finding people whose houses are on fire, let's imagine that 60% or 6% of your market is like buyers right now, which the only reason I pull that is because we figured that out at some point in the QA space, that like 6% of the total market, addressable market today is a buyer, which means basically 96% is currently not a buyer, but a much higher number is going to become a buyer in the next 2-year cycle. And so the key is to transition from this to a relationship-based system where basically you are seeding relationships with people who right now are not buyers, but when they become a buyer in 6 months, they think of you, or you have enough of a relationship where you can see a signal for them And if you see that signal that when you reach out to them, it's not completely cold, then you're going to have a substantially higher chance of doing them. There's also a ton of tools to do this, right? So we right now, and if you want to get access to it, hit me up because we're going to probably productize it soon. We have a LinkedIn Assistant app that basically monitors people's profiles for posts and other things. Now, this is not like your AI garbage, like comment on people's posts. Those are the most annoying thing. Instead, what is just a signals app. So it's basically, hey, these 100 people are people that I currently want to continue to build a relationship with. Please monitor for when they post. When they do post, I try to take time to write a thoughtful reply. And then basically I'll send a connection request, and it works remarkably well for building relationships and connections. Then I'll have a virtual coffee or something like that. And so you build relationships. And the key in today's world of building relationships is relevancy, not personalization. So personalization is like the, hey, Ben, I see you run a QA agency, right? It's the trying to sound somehow like you've done research. And like back in 2000s, 2010s, it worked because I don't think people realized what it really was, which is a lot of dynamic variables, and it sounded personal or whatever. I get probably 35 LinkedIn messages a day now, all just so obviously AI that's written based on my LinkedIn profile. The personalization is dead to me. You could largely write anything, and it's going to sound like AI. I just got one that said, hey, we'll buy you a gift card to X local restaurant. I was like, a restaurant called Stella. It's a nice restaurant, right? That sounds personalized, but all that is just AI reading Traverse City best restaurants, and they're offering to buy a gift card, right? So what you need to focus on is you need to focus on basically relevancy, and then, in my opinion, value up front. And value up front is what has really changed with AI. So I used to really rely on sales because value up front would take a lot of time and effort to do. And by value up front, I mean like courses, free tools, basically things that people would pay for otherwise, but you're giving them for free. This is also a Hormozy thing, and some other people have said this, but like basically things that you have proven by giving them away that people actually get value from, right? And then producing those things for free and giving them. I want to say like Gary Vee also talks about this stuff. AI has completely changed your ability to do this if you know your industry. So, for example, I've built free QA tools, I've built free courses, I've built free demos, all kinds of things that otherwise would have taken me like tens of hours, dozens of hours. And now with AI, I can produce. And those are unbelievable wedges for building relationships. And then the key thing is the more value that you can provide continuously that's relevant before you make an ask and draw into the capital, the political relationship capital that you have, the more likely is that ask is going to work when that ask happens, right? So when that person does become the buyer, they move into the 6%, you have provided so much value that you're doing this. Now, the key thing here, this is really the key thing, is you can't do this bespoke. It has to be buckets. You cannot be doing one-off things for people and expect this to work. It has to be, and our rule is around 250. Unless 250 prospects would really value the thing that we're doing, we're not going to do it. That's just our rule of thumb. And so if I was starting over today, to summarize, I would take these tactics and combine them with these tactics. What I would do, because I didn't have any of these tactics 10 years ago. This 10 years ago was just brute force. It was get to 1 million, brute force, and then figure out how to go from there. Now what I would do is I would focus on basically what are the things that can create as much value up front as possible. And then what I would do is I would not try to find just people whose houses are on fire. I would instead focus on how do I get that value in as many people's hands as possible. And I would beg, cheat, and steal to do it because that's just welcome to starting a business. And like, obviously don't break the law, but do what you have to do kind of thing. And then from that point, after you get to a certain point, then you transition to a much more stable set of marketing and other things. So yeah, that's what I would do if I was starting over. There's all kinds of tactics involved here and that are much more technical, right? There's how do you build sales domains? How do you do LinkedIn automation at scale? How do you actually do value up front? How do you build your own cheap software? How do you do presentations, stuff like that? So if you want more of that content, hit me up. I'm just going to get started, but it's been 10 years. So I want to start doing a little bit more like business focused content because I really enjoy it. I feel like I've learned a lot of lessons. Has that been under that the whole time? All right, should know that going forward. I wonder if it's like that. All right. With that, I appreciate your time. Talk soon. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Talk soon. Bye.